Welcome to the MMHP and the 989. Podcasting from the Michigan Rock Legends Hall of Fame in downtown Bay City. Channeling all styles and eras of Michigan music history from the city by the bay. And now, Dr. J, Sir Fred, Mr. Mike, and your host, Scott Baker.
All right, we're back here at Studio 163 in Essexville, Michigan. We're right around the block from the Michigan Rock and Roll Legends Hall of Fame on Washington Avenue. A lot going on as we're heading into spring, and the Pink Floyd 50 has been selling out every weekend at the planetarium, and bands are starting to get back out playing, and the green grass is starting to pop through the ground. So what's new, Dr. J? Anything new?
Well, just mentioning Pink Floyd, I saw that WNEM had a big, well, not a big segment, but a little segment talking about it,
Yes,
which was nice.
Yeah.
I don't know if you looked on Facebook. We completed the new question mark in the Mysterious 96 Tears exhibit at the museum. Also, we completed the Daniel's Den door at the museum. So
door?
Yes, we have a fire door at the in the gallery that you can't get rid of it because it's a fire door, and it's got to be propped open every day when the museum's open. And so it kind of blocks part of the wall for display. So what I decided to do was to use the door as part of the display. And I had some great photographs of Daniel's Den from back in the 60s. Also a great photograph of the two teenage rock and roll writers, Deb Hardin and Joe Hintz, who had their Deb and Joe column. So we kind of put all that on the door, and we want to give credit to Daniel's Den. It was one of the, probably, I guess, maybe the nicest of the teen nightclubs of the 1960s in the Tri-City area. Anyway, so that's the big deal with the museum so far.
Excellent. Good deal. Mr. Mike, what's going on over there?
Oh, not much. Just the usual.
Yeah, taping and
Different, yeah.
taping and throwing in a pile.
Shows,
Yeah.
The next concert out of town is Larry McRae in St. Louis.
Yeah, he sat in with somebody on Midland Street last night.
Oh, did he?
Across the street from Kevin. Kevin said, "Yeah, Larry was over at Chris's playing last night. Was sat in with somebody."
Okay.
So is Larry playing in St. Louis, Michigan, or are we talking Missouri?
Michigan.
Okay.
Yeah, over by Alma.
Yeah, sure.
That show, the August 4th gig, he's headlining down here. At
In Bobby Balderrama's Smooth Jazz Group.
Mike
Robert
Brush.
Lee Review. Mike Brush is going to be there.
And me.
Former guest, Scott Baker. Yes, indeed. Playing some songs from the new LP.
Yes, and it just got wrapped up today.
All right.
The album
Looking
just got
forward to
finished
that one.
today. Finally. So Purpose will be out here, and we'll do a little thing on that down the road. How you doing, Sir Fred?
I'm doing real good.
Oh, you invited this guest in that we got a hold of all this information from here last month. That this guy's a legendary Whitehead music Michigan family master. Can you give us a little background and introduce your guest?
Well, the Kempf family, I think, as musicians, go back to the late 1800s,
That's right. Yeah.
maybe even earlier.
My dad's uncles.
Okay,
they
and
started-
Martin, your grandfather, right?
Martin was my grandfather. And
they played in the Amston band in a lot of different orchestras. I mean, they're all in my first book here, that pictures that you gave me.
That's Marty Kempf, who we're introducing here. How you doing, Marty?
I'm doing good.
Good. Well, I'm gonna let Fred tear up these questions. I just wanted to get everybody your name out here, so I'm sure this is gonna get a hit, kind of like our Opperman show's getting hits right now, like hugely. So we got some guys with some classic names going out here. So throw down, Fred. Go for it.
Well, then also your father, I remember an article that you gave me when he was like 10 years old or something.
4 years old. 4 years
At the
old.
Saginaw Auditorium or something, and he was the
Jefferson-
world's smallest drummer.
Jefferson Strand.
Oh,
That was
right, the
like
Vaudeville.
next to the
Right.
LaSalle Bar.
Right. Of course, you wouldn't know it now, but
No.
actually, I never even knew that.
Does
It was
Lanny still have a shop there?
No, he's in the south side.
He's back to the south end?
Yeah,
Oh, really?
yeah. Yeah, so your father actually was a big influence on me, and I'm sure a lot of, because he was always ready to listen.
Oh, yeah.
Coming in the Whiteheads, I just remember many stories he used to tell me, and I wish I would have wrote them down more, but
That was his job, you know.
with a pipe in his.
Right, exactly.
And then you came in the picture, and I mean, you had your own orchestra, and
Yeah.
What year did Whitehead music start? So that's the
1919.
1919.
yeah,
And the year that you were talking, Dad was born in 1914, so it was 1918 when he and his sister and his dad would be on stage.
oh, his dad too. Okay,
Yeah, his dad played piano, then his sister danced, and Dorothy, and he played the drums and xylophone.
was that like a vaudeville act?
Exactly. They traveled all over Michigan,
Oh, okay,
and he had a what looked like a Navy outfit on,
right. That's what that
And-
picture.
and Grandma, she was in the wings. She made sure that they looked good and their white suits were all clean, and yeah.
When did he start drumming? If he was on stage at 4 years old, jeez.
I understand he was started when he was 3,
Oh my gosh.
but I just found a picture of. I thought he was the youngest drummer, but I just found a picture of Buddy Rich.
I saw that picture somewhere on Facebook. Somebody put it on
Yeah.
there.
The bass drum was painted with his nickname, Traps. Yeah, and he was like 3.
Yeah, because when I first saw it, I thought it was your dad's picture,
Yeah,
and then I read Buddy Rich. Whoa.
that must have been Facebook.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you've had a long history of family musicians here in the area,
Well, we didn't have any choice.
and you're a drummer, right?
That was
One
my,
of instruments.
that was my main instrument, and I really never took lessons because Dad taught in the basement, and I learned through the floor. And I could play a paradiddle when I was 4 years old. You know.
You know, on those wire recordings, one of them was your dad giving drum lessons.
Is that right? I never heard that one.
I didn't copy it because I needed to get the real important. I shouldn't say that, but just orchestra ones.
Yeah.
But after I listened to it, I thought, damn it, I got to get that. Make sure, because I marked it on the box.
Yeah. Yeah.
He does about half-hour drum lesson.
Yeah, and he slept through half of it. He'd put a record on that they were working on, and the kid would be playing, and he'd be looking over to see how he did with the expression of my dad, and Dad would be sitting there with his pipe still in his mouth and sleeping.
As I was doing my research, I noticed, or I found an article that your dad played at the funeral of Angela Renzo,
Right, yeah.
Sleepy Time Gal.
Yeah,
No,
he played
yeah,
it. He played
he
it
played
at the
it.
funeral. Yeah.
What year was that? Do you
Oh, he
remember?
had crazy requests to play things. And here they are at the cathedral.
Oh,
And Monsignor, he didn't know what Dad was going to play. And Dad's playing some rock tune. Oh, and he'd have a fit. He'd have a fit.
Now, when you say the cathedral, Marty, you're talking about St. Mary's?
St. Mary's, yeah.
In Saginaw?
Yeah.
And was that the family parish that you attended, or?
No, it wasn't. No.
Oh, it wasn't?
No, we went to St. Stephen's that started in the Court Theater. Before there was a church or a school, it started at the Court Theater, and the stage was the altar. And they'd have it all decked out, and you'd sit in the seats, and then they got the church built, and it moved over to the church. And
Do you remember what year that was? My wife taught at St. Stephen's Elementary School for years.
had to be, well, I'm 75, so it had to be close to 75 years ago.
Wow. That's quite an auspicious start for St. Stephen's Church.
Really. My sisters went to school there 1 year, but the nuns were too mean. And my mother pulled them out. And here's my dad playing at the cathedral, and his kids are going to public schools. Whenever he'd introduce me, like he'd introduce me to somebody, and he'd say, "This is my son Marty." No, and Marty, where do you go to school? And I'd say, St. Arthur Hill.
St. Arthur.
I still say that today.
That's a good one.
Yeah.
How did he get involved with the cathedral if you went to St. Stephen's Church? Was it just because it was a job?
Well, no, he started there in 1939, I think.
Wow.
That was before we were even alive, you know.
Right.
But he went to the U of D and studied the whole library, and we tried, when Dad died, we tried to give that library away to somebody, and couldn't get anybody to take it. Had the whole library of the Catholic Mass.
See,
Wow.
But yeah, he really didn't care what it was. If it was music, he'd do it. You know, he would
Played at the Shrine Circus. And,
if my mother always said, if the Shrine Circus had asked him to go with them, I wouldn't know my father. Because he was the Buddy Rich of circus drummers.
I remember one year I had seen him there after I met him.
Mm-hmm. The last director I remember that came with the circus, his nickname was Big Shot. He played trumpet, and they hired my dad because the drummer that traveled with Big Shot was hurt in a car accident. I don't know if he was killed or what, but they'd give him a week off when they'd come to Saginaw, and they'd hire my dad. And my dad would catch every lick. When the elephants would raise their leg and do their thing, Dad would catch it. And he'd catch it and hit the cymbal, and the high wire axe. I mean, he was good at it.
wow.
And he played as hard as any rock drummer today. I mean, he'd use those big 2B drumsticks and turn them around and play. Oh, yeah, he didn't play with the tip. Yeah,
Use the fat end of the sticks.
yeah.
He was a union.
Yeah, when we had one.
Right.
Local.
I mean, a lot of those gigs, because I know Paul Danes. I remember seeing your dad with Paul Danes.
They'd call Paul, the circus would, and they'd say, "We need 3 saxophones, we need a trombone, we need 2 trumpets, whatever," and hire
Okay.
and bill. And so that's how they put the band together. And I think every single one of those guys just really enjoyed that, because that was something that not everybody gets a chance to do. And you got to know what the hell you're doing.
Did your dad ever play for, I think you said he did, strip shows? I mean, to get that right on, for high wire acts and stuff.
It's funny you mention that, because today when I was working on that book of articles, I find Tommy Piskus, his obituary.
Oh.
And Tommy Piskus owned...
Right here in Bay City.
What was,
Club 15 or something.
Club 15, and after that burned down, he bought a place out here on Center.
Yeah, Susie Woodman was talking about that.
He called it I think it was the Apartment Lounge.
Oh, yes, the Apartment Lounge.
Yeah, and I won't even go into why that shut down, but Dad would play. He wouldn't play the drums there. He'd play the piano. Facing the stage, he'd be playing the piano. Dad always wore a blue suit. And either the strippers or the guys that would dress in drag.
Oh, okay.
They would have white powder puffs, and they used to have fun with Dad in his blue suit. And Dad would come home from there, and he'd have powder all over him. Mother never said a word.
Yeah, I found an ad that I guess Club 15 was kind of, they had like a lot of strip shows and.
Oh yeah, they were it, and everybody, all the priests from the church, Dad would see them all there.
That's funny.
without their collar. And Harry Jarkey, he used to say that when he'd see that Dad was playing for him, he'd say, "This guy that's playing drums over here," he says, "he's the only guy I know that plays a strip show on Saturday night and plays the organ at the cathedral on Sunday."
And sees the same people, apparently.
Yeah, apparently, yeah. Yeah, Dad never asked how much a job paid. He would never play for nothing. All he wanted to know was, what do I wear? Where's the job, and what time do I start? And they all knew that if he only got paid $5, well, at least he got paid. He heard me take a job one time for nothing. He had a fit. You're a union driver. I joined the union when I was 12.
Okay.
Know where my first job was? Next to Lanny's store. I played at the LaSalle.
Oh, really?
Tommy called.
Okay.
Tommy was playing with Bob
Marty
McCullough
Kane? Oh.
and Arnie Kane.
Yeah, that's
Arnie and
Susie
Bob.
Woodman's father.
Yeah,
Oh, really?
yeah. And Tommy broke his left foot. He couldn't play the hi-hat. And so he called Dad, because Dad was the only drum teacher around and he knew all the drummers. So he called Dad, and he wanted Dad to cover for him at the LaSalle. And so Dad had a job, and he says, "Well, how's if I drop my son off?" And apparently they said yes. So I was scared to death. My mother was mad, but I was 12 years old.
Yeah, you were a lot younger.
Yeah,
Had to be.
They took. I went over there, and Tommy's drums were set up, and I played, and we played the first set. I don't know what language I can use here. You know, I played the first set, and I mean, I'm scared right now telling it. And here's Arnie Kane, who's probably the best guitar player that ever came out of Saginaw, and Bob McCullough, who owned a bass.
Owned a bass. Yeah. We got that reference.
Did you get that? Yeah.
And you were scared shitless.
Yeah,
you didn't want to say
thank you for saying that. Yeah. And so we got done playing the first set, and Arnie went to the end of the bar, and McCullough, he turned to me and he said, "Hey, kid, why don't you take that right foot of yours and shove it up your ass?" I swear.
Right foot. Okay.
And 12 years old, I swore I would never work with him again. And I never did. But I did learn that I was using a heavy foot. Of course, you know, I was covering up his bass, which is what it needed.
half the job when you have a guy that just has
Yeah, I have pictures of him with Bob Elliott.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Yeah?
Maybe I didn't get him from you. I must have got him from Jerry Simpson then. But it was a trio, Bob McCullough, Bob Elliott, and someone else. I can't remember.
Yeah.
You said that you did this when you were 12, Marty?
I'm sorry?
You were 12?
I was 12.
What year, around? 60?
1960.
60, yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Unreal.
Yeah. And I joined the union.
Yeah.
And I joined the union until it basically dissolved.
Yeah, somehow, when I was living in Ann Arbor, I was researching the union up here, 55 or something like that. And the guy who I ended up talking to was out of Brighton.
Oh, really? Well,
So somehow it dissolved, and he has the records, and
it wasn't strong. But I tried to get it going by inviting some of the younger musicians to meetings. And the thing was still going because I moved my store to State and Weineke in 84. And
State and Weineke. Oh, yeah, right.
yeah, and so I moved the meetings from the basement of, I can't remember what church, but they had the same 5 or 6 guys that were at the meeting, and I moved them to the store in our recital hall in back and set up tables, and, you know, and a story that they didn't like, the ones that were at every meeting. What I tried to do is have a raffle, and they pay $1 to get in the raffle, and we had a 6-pack of beer that we'd give away. And that didn't go over well, but
Well, why not? I would think that would have been pretty popular.
Mike, were you around back then?
yeah, right. But so they're reading the minutes of the meeting, and I mean, it really hadn't even started yet, but they're reading the minutes from last week's meeting, and you look across the table, and half of the guys are falling asleep. And so I don't have a table to slam my hand on.
Yeah.
I slammed my hand on the table, and I told them to wake up, and they all got pissed at me. So they quit having the meetings at the store, and that was the end of the union.
Did you get Pat and Sandy McGuinn in it? Because they had stories they used to tell.
No.
John and I, and
No.
Because they said towards the end, all they did was kept giving money for funeral expenses.
Yeah, right.
For old guys, it was all old guys in there.
Right, exactly. It was. And
So they didn't try to bring in new blood, huh?
No, it was all the guys that played in the circus.
Wow.
Yeah. And speaking of Pat and Sandy, I just played their record the other day.
I just sold one of them.
Really?
I was waiting for that.
They're very collectible. Let me for some reason.
I got 2 of them. One of them's still in cellophane.
It's actually a really good record.
Yeah. The records I've got 3 milk crates full. I had 5, but I caught my wife throwing them out until I threw her out. And but I saved those 3 crates, and I got them set up where I'm living right now, and that's what I do. And I work on the articles, and I play these records.
Okay.
And there isn't anything in there that's newer than 20 years.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, you started an orchestra. I remember that photo you gave me, and a lot of the guys in there were older than you, the older musicians.
Yeah, half of them, yeah.
Okay.
But most of them are dead now,
What was this orchestra about?
Well,
Was it the Marty Kempf Orchestra?
Well, the way that started was, and the arrangements, the guy was from Bay City. His family, his father was president of the bank, and he never had a job. All he did was play and write.
Wow.
He was a good friend of Tommy Piskus and Jack Van Auken from Bay City. And my brain's gone. But Tommy said he was talking to this fella's sister who lived in Saginaw, and she had his arrangements that he had stacks of 18 piece and 9 piece. And so she said, if I would mention his name, which I can't think of right now, if I would mention his name, she would give me the arrangements to use.
Mm-hmm.
And so she did. She gave me all these charts. And so every night when we would play, I'd mention his name. And I will think of his name before this is over. But what I did was, I didn't have a band. So I just let it be known that I've got this beautiful recital hall that was in the back of my building. And one night a week, we'd have a rehearsal. And anybody could come to the rehearsal that wanted to play. Anybody. And it worked itself down to, if you knew you really couldn't cut those charts, you just didn't show back up, And that's how the band started.
It was a pretty big orchestra in that photo, anyway.
We had 16 pieces. Didn't have guitar, and only had 4 trumpets. And the book was written for 5.
Oh.
And then there was a 9-piece because all the places didn't have enough room for a band that big.
Was that like at country clubs and?
Oh yeah, we had 3 years that were really strong, and then I got competition. Actually, I won't even say it was competition. There got to be too many of them. Our audience was getting old and fading away. And when we played out at the Bavarian Inn in Frankenmuth, they wanted to have me every Sunday, and I told them no. You just do it. Let's do it once a month, and that worked. But then they increased it, and it fizzled out because we were too available.
What were you playing? Was it big band music or? Oh
yeah, there was. Okay. My advertising said we concentrated on the music of the 40s.
Ah, yes. Okay.
And we used Alan Hale. That was the arranger of
From
those
Bay
charts.
City?
Alan Hale from Bay City.
Wasn't there an actor called that? Alan Hale?
Yeah, from Gilligan's Island, I think.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
he was the captain. Right? Yeah, okay.
But from what I understand, his dad was president of the bank.
Okay.
Uh-huh.
But so I ended up giving those arrangements because, well, I got into this a little bit and it doesn't matter anyways. My soon-to-be ex-wife wasn't into music. And so that's kind of what broke the band up. And broke my music up, was that. And so I had all these arrangements and I gave them to the Eddie Band
Oh, really?
in tuxedo bags for every, and they never took one chart out of the bag.
Really?
And so I just talked to Tim Burgess, who has a big band, last weekend. My sister suggested I give him a call. And I talked to him and I says, if I get those charts from the Eddie Band, would you be happy to look through them and use some of them? So that's what we're going to do. Going to give them.
There probably aren't very many big bands out there anymore.
Well, there aren't many people that really,
Well, to support
really
it.
care.
Yeah.
Right.
It's unfortunate.
Yeah, it is. Well, we were doing the music of the 40s. And it really was kind of because of the age of the musicians that was playing in the band. I have heard a couple of the bands in the Tri-City area that are updated, but they got younger people. And, so we didn't want to do that. It's like it was a hard when I was playing with my trio, I had a hard night to not play Bad Leroy Brown. And with the big band, well, what song you have to play. It's going to be Glenn Miller all night.
Miller.
Yeah.
You were in a band also, you said, with Gus Patterson?
Yeah, his funeral's tomorrow.
What?
I
Funeral?
You
Really?
You didn't know that. He died last Sunday.
Oh, I thought that was the name of the band.
Ooh,
I'm like,
that's a depressing title
I'm
for it.
you were in a band with this guy at funerals
I
tomorrow.
got
I'm
you.
like, whoa!
Who's coming to this
Yeah.
one?
I thought you knew.
Was this after the
More like death
Stingrays?
metal.
I'm sorry?
Was this group after the Stingrays?
Gus, somebody told me of another band, and I don't remember. But Gus's band was big like 1960.
Right. I remember
61.
them.
Do you really?
So, I don't
They
know
were
why,
good. They were good.
but he gave me his card with still the Stingrays.
Yeah. And that was a damn good band.
So were they playing rock and roll?
Yeah.
Instrumentals like the Ventures and that kind of thing?
You hit it right on the head. Yeah, the Ventures was their lead guitar player, and I can't remember his name. He was excellent, and after they broke up, Gus and I hooked up, and we put a band together. I should say he did. Put a band together. We played at the Brown Derby in Midland, and the Brown Derby was hot because it was just outside the city, and Midland was dry at the time. So that bar, you go across the line, you could drink. Every one of these ends up in a story. But Gus and I would drive to Midland. He had a little 4-door Corvair, and we'd put his Fender bass amp, his Fender bass guitar, and my set of drums, which was a 3-piece kit. Well, 4-piece, I guess. Yeah. And we could get it in that Corvair.
Whoa.
And we go over and we play, and it was the Brown Derby had one of those band shells that stuck out the side. And we had a guitar player from Midland, and Gus, and there was a guitar player from Saginaw.
Was that rock and roll?
Yeah. Yes, yeah, but we do a lot of Muddy Waters.
Oh,
I mean, we had a guy playing harp that he was hot.
a harp player.
Yeah.
Whoa.
What was his name?
Huh?
The harp player. What was his name?
I don't remember. But
Ron Tucker was probably
no,
not around.
Ron was taking drum lessons from my dad at that time.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. But the guitar player quit. And we didn't have a guitar player or a singer. And so he gave us the name of a guy, and he came and he played his first job. His first rehearsal was on the stage on a Friday night, which is pretty common. And he showed up, and we thought Porter Wagner walked in. He had fringe, and sequins, and it was god awful. But anyways,
What was the name of that band?
I have no idea.
Don't remember. It isn't Funerals Tomorrow, though. I just know that. But you guys did a lot of rock and roll and blues.
Yeah,
And Muddy Waters and
yeah. If I mentioned
some country.
If I mentioned the guitar player from Saginaw, you guys might know his name, but I can't think of him right now.
What year would it have been?
I was would have been about 64.
Oh. Could
Yeah,
be
because
a lot of guitar players.
Yeah, because I was supposed to graduate in 66. Yeah, and I was in the 10th grade.
Wow.
But then after that quit, then I went to work at the Red Horse.
Well, really?
Another story.
I know they always had a band there, but I only went there maybe three times my whole
Ted
life.
Higgins
That was a name. I remember that
played
name.
sax, and Kay McCready played B3, and Tommy Vitek played drums. And they played on Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. And I'd play on Tommy's drums, and we would play Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday. And then Friday and Saturday, we played at Victor Henry's out on M13.
Oh, wow. When did you have a recording studio?
Well,
'Cause I know Bobby Ganageski has it now.
Bobby walked into the store on State and Waunakee, and he asked me, he says, have you got room in here to put up a studio? And I said, well, we got the recital hall, and in the recital hall there was a little room that I have no idea why it was even there, but we turned that into a booth. Did you ever see it?
I think so. I think when John Coet was working there.
Yeah, there was a little room, and we put in a window, and our deal was, as a partnership, my space, his equipment. So that's how we started out.
Okay. Because I found some record, or I can't remember by who, that it was recorded there.
The first,
Could it be a church or something?
yes, it was St. Pete's out on Michigan Avenue.
Okay.
They had their choir come in for an anniversary album, and another story. At that time, we had that 8-track, and we'd have to bounce from one to another. And then the master was made on beta tape. And we had a lot of hours in that, because that was almost a trial thing. We were learning. And so we had the master all done on beta, and we sent it to Philadelphia, where there was a record plant. They wanted a record. So we sent it there, and we got a call from them saying, we don't know how to tell you this, but that master's not going to work. Mm-hmm. And we said, well, what's the problem? And they said, well, it probably has nothing wrong with it, but your beta that you recorded on doesn't match up with ours. So what you're going to have to do is get that machine to us. So we said, well, we'll ship it to you. And they said, no, you can't do that. Because if you do, if something happens to it, you got however many hours wasted in making it. So Bobby and I, we had a recording session on a Sunday. And the session was over about 6 o'clock. And we got in the car with the beta machine, and we drove right straight through to Philadelphia. And which was kind of a neat learning experience for me, going into a record plant. You know, you think of a nice, clean, it's filthy. You know, it's like walking into General Motors. But we did make that. Album, and it was cool.
Yeah, I've been up to the studio since Bobby had it up in his garage.
Yeah,
I got EJ and the Echoes back together, but then I couldn't get them again. So we got a half.
Wait a minute, you got EJ and the Echoes together?
Yeah, back together.
Well, EJ's dead.
Well, yeah, well, this is now about 15 years ago.
Oh, really?
12 years ago, maybe.
I lose track of time.
And it came out really good. They had 3-part harmony.
Oh, they were masters.
But they wanted to come back and put more vocals on it and clean it up. And that was a beautiful, big board.
Oh, yeah,
Did he expand it or something?
No.
Oh.
We went from that. We went from that Fostech 8-track to...
Yeah, it was huge.
Oh, yeah, and then we ended up with that, yeah. And, but that, that whole business has all changed so much. You've been in it.
Yeah, they've been... Amphigas, I guess, was recording up there.
What was the name of your studio?
Pardon me?
The name of your studio?
Whitehead's.
It was Whitehead Studio.
Yeah, real original. I gave him the name of it too. That he ended up with that as a result of my first divorce.
Uh-huh.
And so we had Al give us, they're not going to put me in jail for this now, it's been too long. We had Al give us an appraisal of the equipment, and Bobby got it. We put the appraisal low. We wanted it low for my divorce.
Right.
And so he got the studio for half of that low appraisal.
Oh.
But
yeah, it's beautiful up there.
oh, I'm so glad he's kept that going, because he is good at it. He is good.
You ever hear of that studio, Scott?
No, is it still going though? Whitehead Studio?
Yeah.
Pull.
It's on Center or Mackinac or
Yeah, it's on Center and whatever the first
right. Well, in the
mile north of Tittabawassee.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah.
I don't know why I haven't heard it, but it's
in his garage, like, this here. You would never know there's a studio.
Who's running it right now?
He is.
Bobby Ginigeski.
Bobby Kinigeski, okay.
Yeah. Bob, better known as Bobby G.
Okay.
Right.
Wow. Cool.
And I still find most everything we did, of course, in the beginning was on cassette. And then we went to CD, but we only did the one album.
Okay.
What was the name of the record? Don't remember?
I don't know. All I know was St. Pete's Choir.
Oh, okay.
And it was a 50th anniversary or something.
Okay. Yeah, I don't remember. I don't think I bought it, but
And I don't have a copy of it. But I got Pat and Sandy.
well, they didn't. Where did they record that at?
Oh, I don't know. It wasn't with us. That was before. That was
Right.
before us.
Well, were you Whitehead's at one time when I first went in? You were across from like where the Warwick was,
State and Court.
State and Court.
Yeah. Yeah. We moved there in 72.
That's my memory of where they're at, too.
Yeah. I bought it in 71.
Okay.
And then 72 we moved because they started that mall, the Fashion Square Mall, and everybody was going out there. Yeah.
Well, you were the same time as Jack Gridley. That was probably another
Yeah.
competitor.
Yeah. Yeah.
But he was also a musician friend, I'm sure.
He was a hell of a musician.
Yeah.
He had, there was a musician that when we were playing out at Victor Henry's, there was a musician that played out there but owed Vic money, and he played vibes. He had a set of Deegan vibes, and they sat in the corner next to me on my drums with a red tablecloth over the top, and Gridley came out, and Deacon Church, who played sax with us, he says, "Hey, why don't you ask Jack if he wants to sit in on the vibes?" Holy shit. He was a monster.
Yeah.
He was a monster.
You know, I Googled him when I was doing research for my book, and I found a Jack Gridley, this was a few years ago now, playing in Florida, backing up a female singer.
He had a lifetime job at that country club
Oh.
down there.
So it
And
was him.
He would work, yeah. He would work there in the winter, and then he would come to North or South Carolina and work in the summer. And he had a grand piano that he'd take with him, that when he closed the store, he saved that one grand piano. And he came in the store one day, and he said, "I got to show you what happened." And he shows me a picture of the country club that he played at in the Carolinas, and all that was there was a chimney, and it had a fire, and with the fire went his piano.
Oh, gosh.
He had no insurance on it. I mean, who would?
Yeah. How did he, do you know how he transported that, Marty? I mean,
With a trailer.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
It seemed it would be hard on a piano, to be driving at hundreds of miles in a trailer.
Well, yeah, we say things like that, but
I know a blues guy, a piano player from Chicago, Jimmy Walker. He used to do that. He'd bring his own piano to the Blind Pig in Ann Arbor.
Really?
And it was always in the back of a trailer, and someone,
Oh, yeah.
more than someone, they had to
Yeah.
carry it down the steps. And
Yeah, Neil Sedaka always traveled with his own piano.
Oh, really?
And he had a Kauai plexiglass piano that he had bought from Kauai. They had made it for him. And he was going to play at Midland, at the Midland Center for the Arts, in their summer thing out in the garden.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And so Scott Smith, who worked for me, who was another unbelievable musician that died young.
Oh.
He was working for me, and he says, "Hey, why don't we had the other one that Kauai made that we had in '84 for our grand opening of our new store. We had it in the window." And he said, "Why don't we see if we can get him to use it, and then we could get some play off of that, so to speak." And so he called and got a hold of his manager, who happened to be his wife. And he said, "Yeah," he says, my piano's out here in California." And he says, "Yeah, that'd be great." So he didn't have to pay anything. Didn't have to cart it. All we had to do was move it out there and tune it. And so we moved it out there, and Scott tuned it. And when the show was over, Scott said, "You wouldn't be interested in it, would you?" He was a hell of a salesman. And he sold it to him.
Oh.
So he had one on the East Coast and one on the West Coast.
Interesting.
You didn't happen to loan a piano to Jerry Lee Lewis when he played at the Civic Center, did you?
I don't think so.
Because I think he was banned from then after that because he stood up on it. And I guess
wouldn't want to.
Yeah. He ruined the piano, I guess.
Is that right?
Did you have any artists such as him come to the store and borrow stuff or set gear up for him or anything? Or who'd you run into over the years?
Oh, we used to run into people when we were on State and Court, because the Holiday Inn was open at that time.
Oh,
and it was
yeah.
the only hotel we had in Saginaw. So when they'd come to town...
That's where Pat and Sandy played for a long time.
Did they?
Yeah.
Well, they would... the people, they're looking for something to do during the day, and what do? They all look for a music store. Well, Here we are, a stone throw from the Holiday Inn. So, I mean, we have the Osmonds, the whole Osmond family comes in and what have you. But there were these guys that came in, and my dad, he had no shame. He never got nervous about anything or whatever. And Dad's walking around with his pipe, and these guys came in, and they were looking at we had sheet music, and they were looking at the different books of music, and they're going, "Hey, remember when we did this one?" And they'd flip the book open and they'd start singing. I mean, you knew they were somebody, but we didn't know who. So Dad, of course, I'm not the kind of guy that would go up to him and say, "Hey, who are you?" No, Dad did, though. Well, we're the Letterman.
Oh.
And so we got, I don't know where that picture is. I got a picture of the Letterman with my dad somewhere, but never did find that. But that used to happen all the time, So.
Yeah, that was a very popular Holiday Inn, I know.
Well,
Because we used to go sit in with Pat and Sandy.
Yeah.
There.
Oh, yeah. Well, like I say, it was the only...
I had Dr. Ross there one time.
Is that
the
right?
blues one-man band.
Really?
Yeah, well, Pat and Sandy let me, they booked it kind of, and so I brought in Dr. Ross.
Speaking of one-man bands, did you ever hear of Ernie Tripp?
No.
Ernie, I found the picture of him again this week. It was his picture on the stage in Nashville. And his real name was, he used to come in and he's making this one-man band thing, and he'd come in and he'd want help with, this is what I want to do, but I don't know how I can do this. And so we'd sit there and we'd brainstorm it and add a cowbell here or a tambourine here or whatever, And Ernie Tripp, that was his real name.
From around here?
He was from, like, up around Gladwin, maybe. But his stage name was Willful Stumble. Ernie Tripp.
Willful Stumble.
Willful Stumble. And I'm sure he's been dead for years, but I got that picture, and that damn thing's going in that book. I mean,
So, being from Gladwin, do you remember what he would play? Was he more like a country musician?
he was a comedian.
Oh, I see. Okay.
And then he played some songs and never finished one of them. But he played banjo, and he had, of course, a kick drum, and he had different pedals, and they'd play different things. But he was on stage at the Grand Ole Opry. I mean, I don't know. Can you say you were on the Grand Ole Opry?
No, I can't.
Well, there you go. Ernie's got one.
He was the only washboard player.
Yeah. He used to come in with his wife, and God, we'd get yakking and working on something, and everything just came to a halt. Then we'd make out something, go through our nuts and bolts.
Yeah, I remember coming in there when I think John and Rose Kohut worked there, didn't they?
That's where they met. Yeah.
Oh, they did?
Yeah.
Oh.
Rose is a cousin of mine, going back a couple.
Posine?
Yeah. And, yeah, that, I remember seeing John just before he passed, and he just.
Yeah, he stayed at my place in Ann Arbor for a while, and
he just couldn't stop.
I know it.
And then he married, and then Rose, when they got married, the morning after they got married, they had a breakfast in the basement at John's mom and dad's house. And there's a bottle of whiskey between every 4 people.
They were Ukrainian.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. But I remember him, he came in the store. He used to come in the store when he was driving cab. And
I remember that period.
Yeah, we were on Federal, and he'd come in because that's how we used to deliver the sheet music and the books to the teachers, was with a cab. So he'd come in and we'd give it to him, and the people would pay it on the other end. And so John would come in and grab a guitar and play a little bit, and he got a job playing at Vince's.
He and I.
Oh, were you there with him? But he didn't.
Well, I could have been. He might have did that on his own earlier, but he and I played there for.
Well, he didn't have any equipment. He didn't have any equipment, so he and I loaded up a Shure PA system and took it out there for him to use, and it was in the winter for for skiing.
Yeah, we wouldn't get home back in Saginaw sometimes until daylight the next day. We'd come to Bay City with some of the waitresses. That's a different story.
Yeah. Well, John.
Well, don't hold out on us.
Yeah,
Come on.
Here comes another chapter of the book here that we're starting to write on our own. What's going on?
Yeah.
John rented an apartment from my next door neighbor, Uncle Danny.
Oh, okay.
And in back of the house was a pond, a big pond, 100 by 200. And then there was a tree line all the way around the back of it. It was woods. And John would sit out there with his accordion and sit on his picnic table and play his accordion. And he loved it because it would go across the water and then bounce back at him. Mm-hmm. You'd get the echo of it, you know. But he didn't just sit out there with his accordion. He'd get a little thirsty.
I witnessed that, so.
Well, you know, and remember when he worked with Bill Pringle?
Yes. Well, it was Bill Pringle, John Kohut, Ziggy, and I.
Oh, really?
Most of the time.
Oh, I didn't know that.
And then sometimes, because I did a lot of the booking, and I booked John and Bill in Ann Arbor when I was living down there at a club. One night, it did.
Well, how could you keep him sober by the end of the night?
I couldn't. That was the problem.
Right.
Couldn't.
Yeah. I always gave Pringle credit for keeping him alive.
He still contacts me, Bill Pringle.
Bill does?
Yeah, through Facebook.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Yeah,
and I was the one that got him going into music again.
Wow.
I told him, because he was in the orchestra when I was in school.
He was?
He played violin.
Oh, okay, right.
And so I'd get wedding gigs at the that bed and breakfast on Washington.
Oh, right.
And
can't think of it.
So I could. That was when I was going to switch into keyboard or piano, and I'd play piano and he'd play violin. Yeah. So he got started doing that, and then it went into guitar and singing. And
yeah, I could. He was pretty good, actually.
Yeah.
And I could never figure out, because the women loved him, and you know, he had like 4 pens in his pocket, and
oh yeah,
he was like
he looked like Dan Pencala.
Oh yeah.
You remember, Dan used to have 4 pens in his pocket and a little screwdriver.
He just passed away, right?
Yeah, he did too.
Yeah, because my friend Eastside was taking guitar lessons from him.
Yeah, he was a.
Did you ever know him?
I know of Dan McCullough. He's to the luthiers in town. He was one of the masters.
Okay, yeah, I never met him or
not
anything.
just a teacher, a wonderful teacher, but he could. People came to him from all over to get their gear fixed for guitars.
really?
Oh, he could do things to guitars that people didn't know could be done.
Yeah, and teach on top of it. You know.
Yeah, and he was a hell of a player. The only problem was he was pretty rigid. I mean, he was amazing, and he wasn't comfortable on stage. I got a picture of him playing the guitar over at the Warwick.
Really?
With Jeff Hall, Nick Calandro, and I don't know who's playing piano. And maybe there isn't anybody. But he's not comfortable. On breaks, he'd go out in his car. He'd sit in the car. But
yeah, you couldn't be a musician playing out if you're
no,
not with the people.
But teacher, he I don't.
Did he work at Whitehead's?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
When I bought the store, he was driving from Bay City, where he lived at that time, to the store at 5:30, and we would close the door at 5:30, and he would put chairs in the middle of the little space we had, and he'd have students come in, and he'd have about 6 students come in one night a week.
Okay.
And then he moved to Saginaw, when I asked him if he would go to work for me in the repair shop. And he would put as much effort into a $29.95 Stella guitar as he was a country gentleman.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and I says, Dan, it's only $29.95 and we can't be spending 2 hours on that guitar. and then we, so he said, well, I got an answer for that. So we hired East Side.
Oh,
Yeah.
I didn't know he worked for you guys.
Oh, yeah. And I had bought Walt Fenn's accordion studio on Elm Street. And Penn Collin put him over there all by himself.
Wow.
All he did was set up guitars when they come in. That's all he did.
Well, I know he went to school for all that.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I follow Eastside all the time on Facebook.
Oh, yeah.
He keeps busy.
Yes, he does. We talk all the time. He comes over about once a week.
He's live every Monday on Facebook.
I know.
That's forever. He's been doing that. Well, at least through COVID, and he's still doing it. So
Really?
yeah, it's wonderful. Every Monday night you can count on, flip it on Facebook, and Eastside's in the feed playing live. It's usually from a blurry basement somewhere, and sometimes
No, that's one of his bedrooms.
You see, I don't know those things because I couldn't get away with it.
now you will.
Now I can.
You're gonna get back out there, eh?
Well, I don't know if I'll get back out there,
You
but
said you got 10 more years. I heard you before the show
who
started.
knows? I did buy a digital piano.
Uh-oh. Look out.
Oh,
So this is the future of Marty here. What we got? What are you going to be doing here in the next?
I don't know. I haven't decided.
Yeah.
I don't even know if I'm going to stay here.
Are you going to close your eyes at night and dream of what you're going to do the next day and go out and do it?
Yeah, do it, Eddie. I have got. I'll just take a second telling what I've got in mind. I'm going to buy a. I'd like to buy a 2-bedroom, 1-bath house. 1 bedroom for me, 1 bedroom for the music, and I doubt I'll ever get a grand piano again because I don't have that kind of money. But I got my digital piano that's brand new. I'm sure I can find a B3 in a Leslie 145, and if I don't get a B3, I'll get myself a little Hammond M3.
You know Swivel?
Huh?
You know Swivel? Dan Slowinski?
Yeah.
Yeah, Swiv's got a basement full of stuff. He used to anyway.
Really?
you didn't say any drum kit.
Well, I've got my Rogers. I've got my Rogers drum kit from 1960,
There you go. That's
and it's
That's priceless
the
right
black
now.
Mardi Gras pearl.
that's like a 59 Les Paul to drummers. You know,
Yeah,
that's
and,
game on.
And my favorite cymbal, my son-in-law sold. But
Symbol. That's a good different symbol. So you're gonna start digital recording out of your house?
no, I'm not.
Just gonna jam.
I don't know anything about this stuff. No, when MIDI came in,
You went out.
I wasn't comfortable.
You checked out when MIDI came
Yeah.
in. Okay.
Yeah.
When did Whitehead close?
1994.
It was around
Oh,
a
that long
time.
ago. Wow.
Yeah, that's what I say. I've been out of the loop for 20 years. And I don't even want to go into that story of how we ended up closing, but it wasn't because of lack of business. Believe me.
Isn't that where the hardware store is now?
No, it's in between 7-Eleven and
Okay.
7-Eleven and Wolf Isles.
Wolf Isles.
We had the building there. I'll just touch bases with it. It was a tractor dealer years ago,
Okay.
and they found oil tanks, gasoline tanks underground.
Whoa.
And that was in the beginning of things getting nasty, and they didn't have any money for cleaning up. And so basically it put me out of business.
Whoa.
So that's how I got into real estate,
Okay.
because I knew how much it was to move a yard of.
Well, I remember coming up for the blues festivals up in Tawas, and I'd see Kempf for sale signs everywhere.
Yeah,
All the way back to All Gray, to Tawas, to past Tawas.
that was I as much as I hated selling real estate, I enjoyed that store because it was right on Newman Street.
Right.
And I could talk to all the people. And I had my dog sitting out there on the sidewalk. So, but no music.
Well, thank you, Marty, for your stories. Thank you for bringing it to the studio and giving us such a back history on so many different things. I'm sure that there's a whole other show inside of you, and if we could write, once you start playing again, it'll probably all come back. You have to jot down all those stories so we can have another show.
Put me down on your calendar for a year from now.
All right, that's the plan.
And see what comes out.
All right. Yeah.
Marty Kempf, thank you so much, man.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. Thank you.
The MMHP is hosted on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, and our own Libsyn podcast site. You can also search MMHP 989 on Facebook for up-to-the-minute information, as well as both Dr. J and Sir Fred's album picks of the week, posted every weekend. Don't forget to look for Mr. Mike's local music live series, posted frequently on MMHP's Facebook hub, as well as Scott's Mid-Mitten 15 from Harvest Canteen, featuring one-on-one interviews with Michigan music artists. You can connect with Scott on the web at scottbakermusic.com, Dr. J at michiganrockandrolllegends.com, Sir Fred at fredrife.com, Mr. Mike at YouTube at Mr. BT1. That's MRBTEE and the number 1. Brought to you by Michigan Rock and Roll Legends, located both inside the Bay County Historical Museum on Washington Avenue, as well as Scotty's Sandbar on Evergreen Drive at the Bay City Middle Grounds.
On behalf of our hosts, Dr. J, Sir Fred, Mr. Mike, and myself, this podcast wouldn't have been here without the voice of the MMHP, Mr. Eddie Switek, the generosity of the Bay County Historical Museum, which hosts the Rock and Roll Legends Hall of Fame, as well as this podcast, Mr. Alan Garcia, all of our guests, and especially to the listeners. We want to thank you.
That music comes out of those wires.
I remember Dad with that wire recorder.
Wow.
And he'd be rewinding one. Well, you've done it.
Yeah.
He'd be rewinding
said,
one
be
and a
careful
wire would
because
break.
it could, right.
And that wire would just go and make a ball. And all you do is cut it here and cut it here, tie a square knot. And
Wow.
So that's before magnetic tape?
yeah. They started, those were originally
Military. weren't they?
military, right. Yeah. But I told Fred I was at the Hall of Fame, and they have if you haven't been there, you can follow the history of recorded music.
Right.
And they've got all the machines, and there is that wire recorder that I gave Fred.
That's a beauty. I mean, it's almost like Art Deco or something.
Yeah. Oh, the grill on
Right.
the grill on it is, yeah. I remember Dad, here he was, a guy that played in the cathedral 7 days a week.
A friend of mine just told me that again, who went to St. Mary's, and he said Bill Kempf played organ at St. Mary's.
30 years. And he had 3 choirs,
Wow.
and he played 6:45 Mass every morning.
In the morning?
Oh, yeah. And then he played 8:15 Mass for the students.
Wow.
And some of the stories. I mean,
I don't mean, but do they get paid to do that?
he got paid $100 a month,
Oh,
and he had to play all the weddings, and he couldn't charge the people for doing the wedding because they were members of the church.
Marty.
Well, usually they would tip, though, wouldn't they? Give them a tip. I know as an altar boy.
Dad got to a point where he would go up to him and say, "I know you can't charge, but I don't get paid for this."
Yeah. Okay.
And so he'd get paid,
Well, good.
$20 or $25. But he loved it. And then he got fired.
oh, he didn't tell me about that.
Oh yeah, he got fired because Monsignor couldn't afford him anymore. Monsignor was doing he was doing the work on the boiler himself. So they had a nun that took over. And 30 years. I just happened to run into my sister gave me a tub of articles. And she says, I haven't gotten to these, but she says, you're not working right now. She says, if you want to go through them, see what you can do. And I just ran into an article of the 25th anniversary of him playing at the cathedral.
Wow.
Oh, I found some stuff on JB. And, what's his name? There's where I get off. Wrote the book.
Grant?
Yeah.
Bob Grant?
I found the article out of the Saginaw News.
Oh.